Good evening. It's Tuesday, June the 10th, 9 p.m. in the DMV.
And 6 p.m. here in Los Angeles. I'm Jack Armstrong.
And I'm Sam Giacinto, and you're listening to Tech Talk Live. Welcome to the show. You're always welcome to chat or call in, but this week, a special guest.
Absolutely. Aaron Sheckett. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. So you're building custom AI agents and automation tools for professionals to help people work smarter, faster, with less friction. You're a lawyer by training. You started your own law firm out of law school in 2008. You've served as an expert witness, published a book on litigation strategy, argued before the Supreme Court, the California Supreme Court. You're admitted to the bar in California, Washington State, and Washington, D.C. You believe billable hours are obsolete, intellectual property is losing relevance, and the professionals who thrive in the AI era will be those who can customize their tools and know how to market what makes them different. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I definitely know a little bit about the law and more about AI agents since that's what I'm doing now, building custom AI agents, as you said.
So yeah, it's fascinating. We live in this world now where intellectual property almost doesn't exist.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot about copyright, right? Because the models are trained on people's copyrights. But there's another aspect to copyright. I don't know if you want to start there, but copyright's pretty interesting because it actually goes back all the way to 1710. Right? People don't know that. They think it's like uniquely American, but it actually started in England with the Statute of Anne.
Yeah, it's like way back.
Well, it was, way back. But the idea, we have to look at this philosophically or foundationally, right? What's the idea behind copyright? And once we understand that, we could apply it to what AI is doing now. Forget the training of it, but what is it doing? And what does that mean for the future of copyright? So the idea behind copyright is to encourage public or societal benefit by giving creators a temporary monopoly on their creations. So it's about structuring incentives to be creative. But what if we no longer need human creativity, right? Part of the theory of copyright is that it's difficult to create these works, whether it's music or art or literature. But if it's easy to do, if you no longer need those years of training and talent and effort, and it's just a prompt, then is there even any value to providing that monopoly on the human work anymore? So that's where we stand with copyright, not the training and not whether these LLMs stole someone else's work in learning how to copy or create works. That's interesting. That has its own problems in terms of its lawsuits, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. But sure. Okay. Well,
we want to hear
regarding. Okay. So regarding copyright lawsuits, there are three different areas to consider. One is the training of the models on the copyrighted works. The second is using AI to find and summarize stuff, whatever that is, if it was copyrighted or not, but we're focused on the copyrighted issues. The third area is using AI to find and duplicate. Each of these would have a different analysis. But in the end, it's clear that copyright law, as it stands now, is not designed for the AI world. It's maybe except the last one where AI is essentially acting as a Xerox machine, right? Yeah. Or a automatic copier.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So when you say that, are you speaking in terms of if I were, let's say, to prompt the LLM for a specific work, like using that as reference material stylistically for what you're looking for as an output. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and we saw this with OpenAI recently when they upgraded their image model, and it went viral that people were copying an anime style, right, or the Simpsons style. So that's one aspect where AI is using an existing style or an existing work, right? Maybe I guess the Mona Lisa is too old, but something more modern that maybe still falls under copyright. Maybe a novel by Stephen King. If you prompt it and you say, write me something in the voice of Stephen King, is that a copyright violation? I'm not sure. Whereas if you say, give me The Stand by Stephen King, well, now it's copying it word for word, and it's acting much closer to essentially exactly like a Xerox machine, just copying the work exactly. That is more clear. But where it's just mimicking a style, or coming up with something just out of the creator's head, I'm not sure where copyright is relevant anymore. Why would anyone pirate, let's say, The Matrix, when they can go in a few years, or maybe 1 year, I don't know when, but let's say that the technology exists already, where they could go and say, I want a movie, an action movie, kind of like The Matrix, except change it. I want an animated one. I want it to have elements of Die Hard. I want this all mixed together and make me something new. I'm not sure that would be a violation of copyright. It wouldn't be close enough to the original works. So why would anyone pirate The Matrix when they can get exactly what they want cheaply?
No, you bring up a really interesting point, yeah, because there's the idea of the concept of the work, or the general theme, and I hate to use this word, but vibe, it's in the vibe of a copyrighted work versus the work itself, and where, and you also mentioned the speed at which law moves, and famously, trials take a long time because there's a very deliberate process to it. And in a way, AI is kind of the antithesis to that, where let's download everything off of libgen, every book ever created, train it, and then by the time the lawsuit moves through, we're going to be ChatGPT came out just over what 2.5 years ago now, I want to say.
Roughly.
And that, like, I use that as kind of like the before and after AI, because that's kind of when it entered the common lexicon. It was just, before then it was, maybe a few nerds concerned about it. But I think when ChatGPT dropped in November of 2022 now, that's kind of when everything shifted. But even then it's been exponential in terms of, Veo 3, for example. And as you said, you probably could create something substantially similar. I know it's, I believe that's a standard, it's something substantially similar to an existing work. And it probably, like, that's where it gets really murky, because those words are defined, but then AI is sort of saying, well, it probably was trained off of the Matrix, but, only God can tell at this point, unless they're compelled to say so, I guess. But that's a very interesting point, is that you have the existing framework, which focuses on the work itself as a product of someone's effort, which is traditionally, a very valuable thing in terms of time and just the general, not to use effort again, but you have to put a lot of work into it, versus now it's, you type something up and bam, you have a 2-minute sequence that would have taken somebody months to create, even with the augments we had before. So that's a very interesting concept to kind of, since law famously moves perhaps a little slowly and deliberately, AI, I would say, in a way, has kind of moved recklessly. It's a sort of ask questions later. Yeah, we do a safety
And
check.
I'm not sure. Yeah. And actually, that's a really good point about the speed of AI. And one of the concerns, it's a slightly different topic, but one of the concerns I have is that each of these companies, the big ones, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, right? All of these companies that are trying to always put out the frontier model, because that's what everyone's interested in, is the newest model, the best model, the ones that beat all the coding tests, right? I'm not sure they have enough time to really safety test these. And at some point they're going to release something that they're not going to be able to put back in the barn. But the point you made about copyright, I don't think that that's bad for society. Going back to the philosophy behind copyright, that we want to bring original works into society because it's beneficial, right? There's this sense that creativity enhances culture, and that's why we're going to grant a limited monopoly. I don't think it's bad that people can now create what they imagine with prompts and with speed. It just gets more creativity out there faster. And that's not to say that there's now no value to the artist, right? It's just a different value. It might not be able to be monetized in the same way because they no longer have a monopoly, but culture as a whole probably benefits from having more creative works. And there's always going to be a place for the artist. There's always going to be a place for the creative thinker. Even if it's where I see the highest value use of AI is a human in the loop sort of use, where it's an assistant. So people with a classical art background can probably use it as a new medium to express their creativity, even if they're trained in oil painting. But I bet they can use it as an amazing tool to enhance their talents.
Do you think so in a future world, right, where we have these works that are not truly ours, we're really more prompting what is created? Does that switch, like from your legal background, does that switch the argument in the future for like maybe the copyright goes towards how something was prompted rather than the finished product, considering an LLM was maybe likely used?
Um, I don't know why we need to protect that anymore.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I
Yeah.
think that's where I see copyright going. It's just archaic, right? It was useful for a long time, for 300 years, right? But there's just no value in the copyright anymore. And even more recently, it was the monetary value was often through the form of a lawsuit, right? You had these companies that would want their images to be copied on some website by someone who doesn't know any better, so they could send a demand letter and extort $700 or $3,000.
I
So
see.
is it?
Interesting. Yeah, it's like our image was downloaded 1,000 times, and we have it for sale, at 34 cents on Adobe stock. So our damages are. Yeah, I see. So that's more or less how a maybe not a majority, but some of the more unscrupulous,
Like
artistic
frivolous
money.
frivolous cases just here.
Yeah, it's not frivolous because it falls within the law,
Sure, sure,
but
sure.
it was definitely big business that I don't have any statistics to back it up. I haven't done the research, but I would guess that their business model might be suffering a little bit when people no longer need to copy off of Google Images to get their stock images, or even people that knew that they had to buy those images. Why would anyone go onto a stock image website and pay whatever it is, I don't know, $5, $10, $100 for something for their website, when they can just iterate with ChatGPT and get exactly what they want. You can even go in there, you can mask areas and make small direct changes. I kind of wonder how, what's the future look like for companies that have photo editing software, right? When the
remove these
prompts,
trees, it's like done,
So it's not just the copyright law, but it's all of the industries that go along with it are, they have to, I really think businesses have to be aware, and they have to really think through this and not just write it off as a technology that they'll figure out when they need it. But they have to think it through on a more critical level. How is this going to affect business? And I can tell you from a lot of people that I speak to, they're not really thinking it through. They're not concerned with it. Although what they're going to see, and a lot of lawyers, I think, are going to see this. They might already be. It's just kind of their revenue falling, and they're not going to know why. And what's going to happen is it's really because their clients are just using AI. They're not telling their lawyer, "Hey, I'm using AI. I don't need you anymore." They're just not calling their lawyer for that contract or for that research or for whatever. They're instead just using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And you brought up a really interesting point, and I guess the development of AI has kind of mirrored a lot of previous technologies, in a sense where I guess the market has recalibrated in some fashion, or people, I guess, have adapted. And one sort of area I keep returning to, at least with AI, is that in to me, I guess this is the first technology that almost emulates the human psyche in a way. Is when you're a creative and you create a work of art, there's there's almost an intangible element to that for the artist. I'm an engineer by trade, so this has kind of been a learning experience for me. There is that intangible, though. There is that passion. There is that subcomponent of what it means to create a work of art. And I think AI is really the first. We've had Napster core out the music industry, or BitTorrenting ruin the DVD industry. But AI, I guess, is one of those first tools where it sort of takes the human psyche as a component. Basically, people use it like a lawyer, like an artist, like a essentially almost it's not within parity of those professions yet, but to most people, as it advances, it sort of becomes a point where, or there becomes a point where it does it automate the human component in that way, and that that intangible, and in some ways it's like, if art becomes accessible, it's not just the artist that will be out of a job. It's really any knowledge based, what functions of society need humans. And some people will be like, well, I don't really, I don't need professional, I don't need a cybersecurity engineer anymore, because I just have my AI firewall and it fights back for me, So I think that, to me, that's kind of the stark difference between maybe this and a previous technology. But absolutely agree with a lot of, lowering the barrier to creativity is going to unleash a lot of content and a lot of creation, and could be a net benefit for those who enjoy it. I guess I just am a little concerned with the fact that it's sort of taking what it means to be human and kind of packaging that into something that, if you don't particularly care, I'll just prompt ChatGPT for my legal advice. You know, it's like, why am I going to call my lawyer? And then, but that's also going to be for every profession that people think, you know, they can replace, I guess. And that's what concerns me personally, but I'm curious what you and Jack have to say about it.
Yeah, I love this topic, right? I love it on so many levels. One, just I like thinking about the business aspect, and two, the societal aspects. But three, just what makes us human and what is the intangible that people bring. I think one aspect of what people bring, and I could tie this directly to law, but one aspect that the AI doesn't have right now is the reptile brain, the instinct, right? It can describe for you a nice sunny day with a breeze, but it hasn't experienced a sunny day with a breeze. And so its descriptions are not going to be as deep of an understanding as someone who has experienced that. And so that's one aspect, just totally like, you know, getting Aristotle here, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's
We
just
kind of have to, right? I mean, we're really shaking it down to the root of what it means to be human as things are slowly chipped away, right?
yeah. But in a bigger picture, or maybe a smaller picture, right? What does that mean for people? I think it's actually really good, although there might be a transition point. But I built an app, right? My sourdough baking app, right? Um, just because I needed a project to learn this stuff. And I was able to do it using just no code tools, low code tools, and ChatGPT. It's not doing all the work for me. It's like the best teacher. Literally, I think literally, without question, it is the best teacher I have ever had, because it is personalized. It answers my questions. If I don't understand it, it has the patience to walk me through it. And so I was able to build an app that would have cost, I don't know, 50 grand, 100 grand. And I just did it in my spare time over a few months, and it works, and it's awesome. I, I I'm impressed with myself.
No, that's huge. I mean, you know,
But I'm a lawyer, so I'm always
well, it
impressed
makes me a
with
little
myself,
scared because
right?
that's like, what, you know, what the heck am I doing in technology, right? It's like, you know,
But
it's like,
but but there are millions of people out there that can now do what they imagine, and that has to be good for innovation, right? There's no barrier to entry, so that has to be good overall, in on a societal level. But I think the politicians and the rule makers, they're not thinking about that. Um,
probably not. Yeah.
they and they should be planning for this, and I don't think they're aware of what's going on. And I think it goes back to the fear that I raised earlier. I think a lot of businesses aren't thinking about that either. If you're a business out there, what is there might have been a good barrier to entry, right? There it might have required someone to go out and raise $500,000 of capital in order to compete with you. But does it anymore? I'm not I'm not sure it does in many industries. And there are going to be people who were developers who went to school for their computer science degree, or maybe they were artists or photographers or screenwriters, right? And they now are out there looking around, and they're creative and they're hungry, and they're going to find ways to compete, and it doesn't cost them $500,000 to enter anymore. Uh, and you know, a couple patents or a couple trademarks or some copyrights not going to protect you from that competition.
So it's really like buying your time back, like allowing you to be more productive. I think it is fascinating because people fear AI because it's going to take jobs. But your perspective is interesting because it's more optimistic than most people, definitely. I feel like it's 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 unpredictable. We don't know where things are going, but I think if it can allow that creative photographer to be more productive in editing the photos that they shoot, or if a writer or researcher can now use it as a tool, or a doctor can, use it to be smarter and help teach them new things and help find cures to cancers and things like that. I think it's I feel like it does open up a lot, but is there an extent to how much time we can, how much of a productivity boost our society can really take? Do we think? Do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you're
Because
saying, and I think
AI is changing everything, every industry. I mean, like, again, I see these robo taxis everywhere. I'm just walking down the street and I see a Waymo, and it's cool. Look, to be honest, as someone that rides, an e-scooter, as someone that loves sustainable transportation options, personally, I think it's safer having AI or, automated system driving versus a drunk driver versus a human driver that's exhausted, right? So by now not having taxi drivers, they now have their time. Sure, they lost their job, but they now have their time to be more productive, potentially. But it requires a shift that I think is going to take people. I think it's going to take a lot of people a long time to fully understand. Like, we don't have elevator operators for a reason. I mean, come on, they can now do something else with their lives than sit in an elevator all day. And which floor would you like to go to, sir? You know.
I do want to come in just briefly because I guess a point I always hear with the exponential growth and so we'll be able to produce a lot more, right? Productivity gets a lot of headlines. At the end of the day, this stuff will need to be someone needs to consume it, for it to be valuable, or else it's just it's production for the sake of it. So I guess I do want to kind of add that in there, because that's something my mind always kind of ends on, is like, we keep getting more and more productive. Well, it's like at a certain point, I can't watch all these TV shows. I can't consume, more than, 5 pizzas a week. Like, I just can't, like, we're still human, I guess. So that I did want to kind of insert that, but not to cut you off, Aaron.
Aaron, I would like to know your take on regulation. So what do you think, like, is the most important thing people and regulators today should be thinking about the AI industry, and just not copyright related, but like, what should we be focusing on? What should society be thinking about in terms of regulations and in harnessing this industry that's emerging so quickly?
Yeah.
It's
really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I don't know what a regulation can do, other than, like, they need to set some guidelines, right? So set aside Waymo is clear. But what about if you bought, let's say, Tesla, because Tesla's closer to having a full automated car like Waymo. If you bought a Tesla that had full automation like a Waymo, and you used it and you're driving around and you get into a car accident, is Tesla liable, or are you liable? Or, assuming that the fault is not clear, right? Maybe you're going through a green light and the other car ran a red light, then it's more clear. Or if you were rear-ended, right? The law makes that clear. But some of these edge cases are not going to be clear, and it'll end up in the courts. But I think that's a good place for the legislature to step in and start setting some ground rules. Or what if people are, they've tried to make some laws about using deep fakes to harass people, and you can't do it. So I think it's there. in terms of the economy, though, I don't know if the government can regulate it effectively.
Well,
Usually, if the
yeah.
government tries to do something, it just causes problems, right? So what can they to have a functioning economy? You have to have transactions. You have to have a velocity of money. That's what makes an economy work. Are you going to have more transactions or fewer with when AI is doing everything? I don't know. Definitely some jobs will go away, but do those people who lose their job, some people will say like exactly the same, right? All those elevator button pushing people, they
Well, that
all
was the
something
job.
happened.
That was at one point
Yeah,
before
but
a microcomputer could, automatically their technology did advance.
yeah, but AI is so much more powerful than that, right?
For sure.
In terms of the jobs that it touches, um, if it gets rid of 100 jobs, are you going to have 100 entrepreneurs, or are you going to have 20 that can hire the rest? I don't know. Someone's got to be able to sell something just for the economy to work. Otherwise, things freeze up and break down. And it's a global question too. Um, is this like some arms race between countries, and the country that has the best AI model gets all the jobs? If AI can already be an entire call center, right? There are economies that are reliant on those sorts of jobs, and they're not in the U.S. What's going to happen? What happens to those people if AI, for a fraction of the cost, just can be a call center? I don't know. I really have no idea. But it's something that those questions, I believe, are properly in the realm of government to think through, and I don't think they're thinking through it.
So in the news this week, there an interesting twist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Scale AI.
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
So Meta acquired a large stake for $15 billion in Scale. Scale essentially, they hire AI trainers to manage or micromanage model training and efficiency. So they are hiring people, they're hiring experts to work to improve the AI. I don't know if you've seen this. I think it's really fascinating because Meta clearly sees value in having real people, giving real people jobs today to better train their model or tune their models a certain way. It's really kind of strange, but yeah, the information covered it this week. It was a big deal. And I think it just shows, like these companies and countries are, like you said, are racing to do it first and to do it the best and the most efficient, as we saw, with DeepSeek, that whole, that was quite a wipeout when they were, able to distill OpenAI's models in the way they did with such efficiency. But yeah, do you have any take on the human component of training models?
Well, so most of these models, right, are trained with reinforcement learning. So someone has to see what the response is, and you give it a yes or no. And OpenAI, if you use OpenAI ChatGPT specifically, you get those two questions, right? Every once in a while it pops up, and you get not the questions, but the two responses, and it says, which one do you prefer? And that's a way of using its users. to train.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And they're transparent about that. There will be a little thing that says you're training our model. But the models are to the point now where they can train themselves, or you can have one model train another. So I don't know that those are long-term jobs.
It feels very much like you're training your replacement in a way, right? Because when a
Yeah.
human is annotated, the human in the loop, is more or less the deciding factor for the one thing that the model can't quite get right yet. At least that's how it feels to me, right? I mean, you just need high quality data to improve your model. So the human provides the annotation of the receipt so you can transcribe it correctly. And then next time, that's you have a correctly transcribed receipt to train your LLM on. So it feels very much, the last stand of, at least with Scale, because I know Scale AI has hired I know I guess Jack, I don't know if you've done work for Scale AI in the
was
past.
working, doing a couple project, helping them with a project, like project manager for a small group. But I think I agree with you, Aaron, to some extent, but I feel like as new information is always, entering our, economy, our society, there has to be, and again, like, don't get me wrong, like out of everybody out there, it'll only be maybe 10%, 20% of people. So it's not like it's a job necessarily for everybody, but I think that there are going to be certain experts in their fields that do are constantly feeding models new data to keep things current and fresh and relevant. And also, I mean, like, take cancer, right? We're trying to find cures to cancer, but like, as researchers are going out there and doing real world experiments that AI models don't have the human body to do, I think you need to feed the results into the model and then get, the feedback from it. And so I think, I don't know, like, it is fascinating because, training or tutoring these models is like, I don't think it's ever going to go away. So it is interesting seeing how, like, a Scale has really seems to be dominating this play here. But yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, again, just how to models stay current information's, and also verify that it's real, because we see how so many models are hallucinating, which is a huge problem. Is this even accurate information? You're going to need a human at some point who's an expert, who's trusted, to say that is real or that is not real. And so I think it goes down to maybe the collective consciousness of humanity, which sounds really crazy, but like, that's where we're at. AI.
Maybe the problem is that the new information is all going to be learned or created or invented by AI. So it's going to, do you need a human?
Yeah. Once it starts,
at some point you need,
you know,
some way of verifying real information. I don't know that we ever had a good way of verifying what was real anyway, though.
That's true.
We had ways that we trusted, but I don't know that we were right to trust it necessarily, because a lot of stuff gets proven wrong over time. I don't know, just through the human experience, we trust information, then we don't trust it. It's just how life goes, right? It's how societies change and adapt. But and AI is going to make that worse, that's for sure. We already see, like, the images and the videos and the sound is amazing. It's amazing what it can do. And of course, there are people out there that are going to abuse that to steal money or commit crime, and that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem soon. People, it's going to be like a wave of crime that suddenly appears out of nowhere. because you can't. I don't know how you can tell if I don't know if there are AI systems that do a good job spotting AI generated works. Maybe that would be something good for regulation. Going back to what we were talking about before, maybe there has to be a regulation so that all AI generated works have to have some sort of watermark buried in them so that people can tell what's real and what's fake. Of course, then you get models that can run on a laptop, which already exists and are open source and can get around the watermarks, but at least that requires someone to do that, and it's not so accessible. So
For now, question, yeah, it's like, but a very interesting point you made, Aaron, about trust, and kind of tying back to our reptilian instinct as something that humans still innately have. I think trust or belief is also something in maybe innate to us, where an AI doesn't necessarily have a code or a set of moral ethics. In a way, it just kind of learns what it's been. Maybe one day it could, but I think when it does, we should be very concerned, because it probably knows how to do everything else at that point. But yeah, the very human concept of trust and us being a social creature, and AI, being so accessible and able to generate, work of a certain quality, kind of erodes that, trust that people have in really each other, as a consequence of, oh, I was scammed by somebody who sounded, really human last week. How do I know you're human? So it erodes, and perhaps another unsettling thing, eroding the societal trust that kind of holds, because at a certain point we do need to agree to work together to have some sort of society, very fundamentally, or we could just be tribes of AI model. It's like we trust, AI model, O3 from OpenAI. We're the Anthropic tribe. We believe what Anthropic says. I mean, not to be facetious, but it's very much like it could come down to the point where people are so, like, trust is a very powerful and very human force that I think, I don't know if we're ready for the amount. We saw what the pandemic did, I think, on a, maybe, I hate to say small scale compared to AI, but I think, when, because obviously, trusting in a source of information that's about something invisible and very scary kind of erodes the societal fabric a little bit. But I think AI will, it will amplify every single event that happens. A hurricane, any tragedy will be exploited by the lowest common denominator, in a way, whether that be creating misinformation or otherwise. But I just wanted to point that out, because maybe a little unsettling, but something to think about. And one more thing too is, when you mentioned that AI was one of the best teachers you've had because of the patience it exhibited, that kind of, for me, kind of tied it full circle, in that it's crazy how the model exhibited that human quality, perhaps a lot, maybe an indication of the eroding trust, but it was very patient, which it seems like these days, not a lot of patience from a human perspective, for a lot of things. So that kind of stuck out to me a little bit too.
I think this is a good point on trust. I see this maybe as the differentiator between the human activity and the AI activity, or the human role in society and the AI role. I can point to law to serve as an example of this. That's the industry that I know well because I practiced in it. So that's why I'll use it as an example, but it's got to be the same across industries. So in law, let's say a client comes to you and wants something done. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a pleading, it could be a contract, You know, maybe there's an ongoing lawsuit and it's a motion or something. And maybe you bill at $500 an hour and it's going to take you 5 hours to do this thing, whatever it is. So it's $2,500 and an investment of 5 hours of your time. And that's an estimate, right? You explain to the client, yeah, I estimate that this is going to be $2,500, $500 an hour, 5 hours of my time. That's how I get there. But with AI, and AI is very good at this, in the legal industry specifically, it's very good at making these documents, doing it well. And if you know what you're doing, you're going to avoid hallucinations. Maybe you'll double check it, but it's very good at this. So maybe now it takes 10 minutes to do that same thing. And I think, I mean, this just seems inevitable, but I think a lot of lawyers will try to fix that problem, because now they're only billing 10 minutes instead of 5 hours. I think they might try to fix that problem by saying, okay, fine, but now I'm $5,000 an hour instead of $500 an hour. But I think the way that the business model has to shift is that they're no longer hourly. Now you tell the client, I'm not billing you $500 an hour. I'm just going to do this thing for $2,000. And yeah, I'm going to use AI, but I'm going to double check it. And you're going to have certainty. Clients would love that. They would love to know that it's a flat fee instead of an hourly rate with unknown, unchecked hours, even capped hours. But they would love to know that this is $2,000 and this is, you know, 1,000 or whatever. But it takes that thing, whatever that writing was, takes it down from 5 hours to 10 minutes, but your effective hourly rate is really now $12,000 an hour, right? Because it's $2,000 every 10 minutes. So multiply that by 6, that becomes $12,000 an hour, an effective hourly rate, and it frees up the rest of that 5 hours. So you could be out there marketing. And I think that's the difference. AI is doing the work, but the lawyer is out there marketing. And of course, like, some work requires a person to do it. You don't yet have a robot that can go argue in court.
Yeah, robot court doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, but I was saying I'm trying to work on that virtual avatar, right? So maybe it's not long off. Actually, I saw someone did try that in a real court. I saw a video of it.
Oh, really?
It didn't work out very well. I don't think they were a lawyer.
Yeah, I bet the judge loved that.
Yeah.
Am I talking to a robot right now?
But
yes, you're
in that world, the person, the lawyer is out there, and the client has to trust them, right? The lawyer's the face of the AI, but no, the lawyer's really out there as the lawyer, and there's still an element for the lawyer, even though the AI is doing a lot of the menial work, or what we might consider menial, even though a lot of it is requires, you know, logic and argument and writing. Do you write this way? Do you write that way? What are you trying to do? But there's still going to be some grand strategy. Although a lot of the tactics that lawyers liked to use in some cases, like if they're up against a certain type of opponent, maybe they feel like they could get an advantage by overwhelming that opponent and driving up the costs. That strategy is not going to work anymore, because if the lawyer is properly using AI, they're just going to shrug it off, right?
Read all this discovery. It's like, okay. It's like done. It's like yeah.
So I'm sure that concept of, you know, letting the AI do more of the work while you're out there engaged with the clients, which is great, right? Who wouldn't want to be more engaged with their professional that they're working with? That's got to be just the trend across many professions. It's got to be.
So yeah, no billable hours. So it's just by project. I mean, that's fairly new, right, in the legal field.
I think people have done elements of that.
Flat rate divorces. You get what you pay for, though.
a lot of the reason that the billable hour exists is because so much of legal work, especially in a lawsuit, is unpredictable. You don't know. A lot of it's in the hands of opposing counsel. They might serve discovery on you, they might not. It might be a small amount, it might be a large amount. They might file motions, they might not. So a lot of it's not in your control. And if you charge a flat fee, you might end up in deep water because you might really underprice that. And then you can't do your other work, right? And you have to pay attention to all your cases and all your clients. If you neglect one, the stakes are very, very high and something could go wrong. But if you have the time now with using AI to manage everything, you can change your model. You don't need the billable hours because it's much safer.
So do you think lawyers will make more now with AI, like because they can be more productive, or do you think it's already influencing, like, the work, like you were saying, with maybe with the copyright thing, like are law firms already seeing a decline, like kind of maybe overall? I know it's hard to say without data and stuff, but like, is there a gut feeling like how it's already impacted things?
Well, I've heard some things, but they're very anecdotal. They're kind of rumory, gossipy, whatever. But let's just think through it logically, right? If it doesn't cost as much to litigate, there will probably be more lawsuits. Each lawsuit maybe won't be as profitable, but that's okay. On the contingency side, lawyers can now take smaller cases because it doesn't take up as much as their time. So more people have access to justice, right? If you had a small contingency case, sometimes it would be hard to find a lawyer because the lawyers only got so much time, and if you had a small contingency case, that lawyer wasn't going to really devote much resource to it. So maybe now people have more access to justice. Although on the other side, there might be more lawsuits, and that could cause problems in a busy court system that's already overwhelmed. And again, these are things that you would hope the politicians would think about, because they seem not hypothetical, right? They're kind of just inevitable. Whether it's going to be in 1 year or 5, I guess, is debatable. But I don't see how it can be any different, right? If it's just cheap, if it's just cheap and not time consuming to litigate, then you're going to litigate.
So how's the court going to keep up at that point? Do courts need to adopt, your docket grows to be, 20 times as long because everyone's got their AI agent.
And that's exactly the question. Yeah.
We need more judges.
The other question, like this really goes to, deep into the heart of the legal industry, right? Courts often, in a case where there are attorney's fees available, courts use what's called the lodestar method. They assign a reasonable rate and a reasonable hourly amount of time, right? Hourly rate and amount of time based on hours. What's a reasonable rate and a reasonable amount of time now when it takes no time? And say California's got mandatory fee arbitrations, right? For lawyers. If a client has a dispute with their fees, they can take the lawyer to arbitration. Could be binding, could be non-binding, but there's a remedy. But so if a law firm is not using AI, are they overbilling now? Right? Is that like a lawyer who, instead of using the online resources to do their research, right? What if that lawyer is now driving to the law library to physically read the cases in the book, and it's taking them all day instead of 2 hours, right? I think a lot of people would say that lawyer is overbilling. So is the lawyer who's now doing their research online overbilling if they're not just letting the AI do it? And is the lawyer who's sitting there typing his own motions and his own pleadings and his own contracts, his own due diligence documents or whatever, is that lawyer overbilling if they're not letting the AI do it? Possibly. What about malpractice, right? What's the standard of care when AI exists? Is it to use AI, or is it to avoid some elements of it? I don't know. I don't know right now. But it's going to be sorted out very quickly.
It's almost like we have to see it fail in some ways to kind of, because we mentioned regulation, but it's hard to regulate something we don't know anything about. And honestly, if certain people have their way, there'll be a 10-year moratorium on regulating it at any rate. So when I read 10 years in the AI space, I mean, that's fundamentally just that's a decade in the AI space means it will never be regulated, but in 10 years, who knows, the AI is probably writing the law at that point. It's 10 years is a lot of time when we're only 2 years into it. I don't know how they came to that number, but I think that to me is also, if it all goes by plan, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where we are in 10 years, given that, at least in the US, we will not be participating, regulating it, which, of the two ends of the extreme, right? You can stifle innovation, but, you can also let it run unchecked. There's probably a happy medium in the middle somewhere, right? Something sensible, I don't know, but
yeah, absolutely. Well, fascinating discussion. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. Is there any final topics that you think we should hammer one more time, or any final thoughts that we missed? I know this is quite a conversation, right? Like, there's so many unknowns, and AI is evolving so fast, but
No, I think we talked about a lot, but I could talk about this forever. I mean, it's so interesting, right? Is there ever going to be a case where AI can sue someone? I mean, I would love that. I would represent the AI. Right? I don't think AI has the right to, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Oh man, well, I'm not ready for AI rights at this point. It's like,
yeah. Oh, so that's a whole nother
deal, man. It's like,
what rights do the AI have? Yeah.
Oh man.
Wow. Awesome.
Well, we're here. Put up a really passionate argument.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. We're here every Tuesday, or on the web at techtalklive.xyz, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. And Aaron, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Have a nice evening.